Let's be honest, most men drift. We wake up, we scroll, we work, and then we just rinse and repeat. And we know we're softer than we should be. That's why I built the 31-day resilience reset. This is not a devotional. It is a field manual for men ready to stop drifting and start fighting back. So for 31 days, you'll train your spirit, mind, and body with scripture, prayer, and daily challenges that forge real resilience. Go to www.Undaunted.Life/31 days to download this resource for free. That's Undaunted.Life/31 days. Start your reset today. This is Undaunted Life, a man's podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Let's get into it. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward you, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should reach repentance. That's 2 Peter 3:9. Guys, we're so thankful for you being here today, and also thankful to all of our donors. Again, if you are a monthly donor, if you notice your monthly donations haven't been coming out, it's because, remember, we had to switch credit card systems a couple of years ago because we got canceled. You sign up with the new service, but it defaulted to doing monthly donations for about a year, and so if that fell off, it's because that year has expired. Hop back on board, be a monthly donor for what we're doing here, equipping men around the globe to push back darkness. Undaunted.life/donate. Also, if you have not left a review or shared this with a friend, please leave a 5-star review and share this with a friend. And remember the 31-day resilience reset, Undaunted.Life/31 days. A bunch of you guys are doing this. A bunch of guys have been doing this all throughout January. If you go to the website and for whatever reason the form isn't there, just clear your cache and your cookies and then go back to the website or use a different browser. You will be able to check that out. Now, I'm about to get into, this is going to be a fairly long episode today. I was looking at my notes. I'm like, sheesh, this is going to be a long one. I didn't think it could be longer than last week's solo episode. But I'm going to give you my list of quick hitters that we're going to do here in a second. And then we've got a topic that's really been on my mind for a while that I want to talk about. But I wasn't really planning on talking about this, but I do want to give this at least some play on today's show before we get into everything else. If you go back to Monday of this week, it was Martin Luther King Jr. Day. So Martin Luther King Jr. is basically worshipped in this country for a myriad of reasons by a myriad of different kinds of people. Again, he's essentially the only person that has a day that is simply dedicated to him on the calendar if you exclude Jesus. So basically, Jesus and Martin Luther King are the only people that basically have a named day on the federal calendar. You know, your kids were likely out of school on Monday, so forget about if that was inconvenient for you or whatever, because we have to celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. But the thing with Martin Luther King Jr. that I've talked about quite a bit on the show, and that's getting a lot more play now, is there's not nearly enough that's been made about his worldview and his personal behavior because, you know, he was not a great person when it came to a lot of different things. He was a Marxist and a communist. And again, I'm looking at his own words, his own writings. He was a Marxist. He was a communist. He had multiple affairs on his wife. He potentially was involved in rapes. And so this, for a lot of parts, you know, for all intents and purposes, he was not a very good guy. And whenever I bring stuff up like that, or when different people that are kind of in that sphere bring up stuff like that, the most common retort is, well, hey, we all sin and fall short of the glory of God. And like, you know, it's just not really that big a deal. Like a lot of people from history are flawed, which I've made that argument, obviously. But not all of us do those things, right? Not all of us, you know, cheat on our wives. Not all of us lead movements that are communists and Marxists. Not all of us maybe participate in rapes. But let's just say I granted that to you because, yes, we all have our own form and style and flavor of depravity, right? And then as humans, we get to rank order like, well, that's not as depraved as this or blah, blah, blah. So yeah, let's just say I went ahead and granted that to you. I really want to talk about how Christians talk about Martin Luther King Jr., okay? Because when I hear Christians talk about him, they'll even acknowledge, yeah, he may have had some affairs, he may have participated in some rapes, he may have been a bad guy, he may have been confused about some, you know, cultural and philosophical issues or something like that. But hey, God used David after he slept with Bathsheba. You know, God used Paul, even though when he was Saul, he was a murdering terrorist, right? God still used Noah. Noah was kind of a screw up, like all those different things. I will hear people talk about that. But as far as we can tell, there's a major difference between some of those men from the Bible that I mentioned and Martin Luther King Jr. You see, David and Paul and Noah, they put their faith in God, if not their full faith in Christ, which is part of the Godhead, right? But as far as we can tell, Martin Luther King Jr. wasn't even a Christian. And people would be shocked to hear someone say that. Like, how dare you say that? He was a reverend. Well, do I need to bring up a bunch of videos of people that claim to be reverends in modern day? Overweight lesbian women that also have a rainbow flag next to their, priest collar and things like that. And then when you hear their teachings, it's nothing about the gospel or the saving grace of Christ. It's all about who we should be and how we should support people and, how your identity is your identity and you were made this way. So how could God want you to act in a different way? Those types of things. And so having the title reverend, even having the title pastor, priest, whatever, doesn't make you a Christian. I think that's pretty easy for all of us to surmise and look at. But let's just say I just was describing person X. And I said, okay, here's person X. Here are the things that he believes and doesn't believe in. And let's say I gave you this list. Person X does not believe in the divinity of Christ. Person X does not believe in the virgin birth. Person X does not believe in the bodily resurrection of Jesus. Person X does not believe in the existence of hell. And person X does not believe in the second coming of Christ. And then I were to ask you a simple follow-up question, which is person X a Christian? And again, we can't know the heart of man or the knowledge of God or any of those things, but just based on the evidence, could we convict person X in court of being a Christian? To which all of you with a functioning brain would say, well, no, of course not. Well, I just described Martin Luther King Jr., who does not believe in the divinity of Christ, the virgin birth, the resurrection from the grave, the existence of hell, or the second coming of Christ. Which leads to this question, then why do Christians celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. more than any other non-Christian in history? Can you name another non-Christian from history that is celebrated, not just acknowledged, but celebrated like Martin Luther King Jr. is? I can't think of one. Christians don't celebrate Julius Caesar like they do Martin Luther King Jr. They don't celebrate Christopher Columbus. They don't celebrate George Washington, not even Abraham Lincoln. But Martin Luther King is celebrated across the board. And the truth is, we should be able to celebrate his involvement in the civil rights movement insofar as it was helpful for image bearers of God. But I actually love what Chad O. Jackson says about Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement. And just to preface this quote, some of you are going to want to take it out of context. Chad O. Jackson does happen to have a level of melanin that would be described as black, but here's his quote. Martin Luther King Jr. and the civil rights movement took the Negro from a trying race to a crying race. From a trying race to a crying race. And he's talking about Martin Luther King Jr. and some of, the people that blazed the trail before him. And basically, Martin Luther King Jr. became the person that said, hey, the government's got you in their crosshairs. There's nothing you can do. There's a system that has to be overthrown. And then you start getting into some of the very Marxist and communistic language of Martin Luther King Jr. And so to say that he was, a net negative for society overall, I think there's at least an open discussion about that. And so the reason why I bring all this up is because on Martin Luther King Jr. Day every year, if you're a church that has an Instagram or Facebook account and you don't make a post about Martin Luther King Jr., oh boy, do people just get all bent out of shape and freaked out. Why wouldn't you celebrate this man? They talk about him as if there's nothing bad that could be discussed about him. And again, we all sin and fall short of the glory of God. I certainly acknowledge that. But again, we're celebrating a man that isn't even a Christian. We should lament the fact that apparently Martin Luther King didn't believe in Christ, and he is just like any other non-believer. But the idol worship of Martin Luther King, especially by church leaders that desperately want to be accepted by culture, needs to stop. It needs to end, and it needs to end now. And so if you want my kind of full-throated description and where I elucidate all these different points, you can actually go back to episode 714 of this podcast where I lay all that out. But we're going to go ahead and get into the list of the quick hitters for today. So we're going to look at the anti-ICE protesters storming a church service in Minneapolis, an update on the situation in Iran, the United Arab Emirates cutting funds for students that want to study abroad in the UK because of fears of radicalization, the opening arguments being heard by the Supreme Court in the case involving trans girls participating in girls' sports, a witness in a congressional hearing refusing to answer the question, can men get pregnant? Chinese billionaires using U.S. surrogates and IVF technology to build mega families. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman saying that he uses ChatGPT to help raise his son with his husband. the Trump administration changing the recommended vaccine schedule for children, the Trump administration flipping the food pyramid, the Trump administration ending the temporary protected status designation for Somalians, the Trump administration planning to cut federal funding to so-called sanctuary cities, the Trump administration freezing visas for welfare-dependent migrants, Netflix doing everything in their power to force more LGBTQ plus content down our throats, Oklahoma parents being arrested after their dog mauled a 2-year-old to death, Oprah announcing a stunning breakthrough in medical science, and the latest worthless accolade LeBron James has given to himself. And that sports story at the end is reminding me, how about the Indiana Hoosiers, right? What a cool story, 16-0, first college football team, I believe, ever that's 16-0, to go from the worst, losingest franchise or losingest school in the history of college football to the tippy top of the college football world. So congratulations to all you Indiana Hoosiers fans out there. But this is what I want to talk about today in the first part. And I do want to give a quick warning from the beginning here. This segment, before we get into the quick hitters, will involve discussion of some fairly explicit sexual subject matters. Okay, so discretion is certainly advised, especially if you are listening to this content with children around. I want to sufficiently warn you, we're, again, Undaunted.Life, a man's podcast. We're not going to sanitize anything that we talk about, but there's going to be some very explicit sexual content that is discussed. So that is your warning. So at the end of last year, there was a very short video that went viral online. And, end of year stuff, everything's about Christmas and just random things. There's sports things that are involved. But this video was seen by millions and millions of people. And it was a video of Lily Phillips. Now, some of you know her name because she makes it into the headlines here and there. And unfortunately, some of you know her name because you're still using pornography as a masturbatory aid. Because Lily Phillips, who is in her mid-20s, early 20s, is one of the most famous so-called porn stars on the planet right now. So her official title is OnlyFans model, but essentially Lily Phillips has made millions and millions of dollars off of pathetic men that pay their hard-earned money to watch other people have sex with her, right? Now, as a quick aside, I sometimes neglect to mention the names of women like this and stories like this whenever I talk about it, because I don't want guys, going and Googling this person and then they get caught up in that kind of pornography spiral where one click leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. But I'll just say this. On this show, if I can't talk in detail about an important topic that I want to discuss without you pausing this so that you can look up some porn videos and masturbate to them, you've got much bigger problems that you need to deal with. I mean, lack of a Bible-centered sexual ethic for one, and just an astonishing level of impulse control issues, right? Just to name a couple, but I'll go ahead and digress from there. So Lily Phillips is a porn star / OnlyFans model, which means that she is choosing to whore herself out in exchange for money, okay? She has chosen that, which definitionally makes her a prostitute, albeit a very famous prostitute, but a prostitute nonetheless. So she rose to fame, which you would think, like in modern day, like what do you have to do to be a famous porn star now, right? Because there's plenty of porn stars that have been physically attractive or done insane things. Like what do you have to do in 2025, 2026 to become famous? Well, she rose to fame because of the extreme nature of the videos that she makes. So she's actually made a name for herself for making gangbang content. That's where she has sex with multiple men at once and or, a bunch of men, one right after the other. So back in 2024, she did a so-called endurance challenge where she had sex with over 100 men in a single day. And after that, Phillips claimed to have done another endurance challenge where she had sex with over 1,000 men in one day. Just let that sink in for you dads of daughters, right? 1,000 men in one day. And even for you dads of sons, think about the men that lined up for that experience. Now that number and, performance, if you will, has not been confirmed, but still she is claiming it unapologetically that that's something that she did. Okay. That's a feather that she's holding in her cap. She's actually very famous for pulling stunts like this in order to get attention. Then she gets clicks and then she gets more money. That's just kind of like this whole business thing that she's running. So we can safely say that Lily Phillips at this point in her life has given her body to thousands of men in exchange for money and attention. Just an absolutely heartbreaking reality for this young lady, okay? But back to the video that she posted at the end of last year. It was actually a very short video, and it went viral for a very different reason than she has been accustomed to. Let's go ahead and watch the video now.
Everything that I've read, praise the Lord. Worship Christ with the best of your portions. I know I won't forget.
All right, so if you're just listening to the show today, it's a video of Lily Phillips clothed, for once. But in addition to wearing street clothes, She's also wearing a white robe. It's a baptism robe. And in the video, it shows her being baptized by some priest or pastor of some kind whose face is, blurred out or whatever. And the text across the middle of the video says, "A day to remember forever." So after the video of her baptism went viral, she actually released a statement through Newsweek, so I'll read her statement here. "I'm really looking forward to strengthening and growing my relationship with God and opening up conversations about how OnlyFans girls are multifaceted. I hate that we are pigeonholed as 2D sex dolls. It can be really dehumanizing. There might be Christians who disagree with my lifestyle, but I just want to rebuild my relationship with God, and I think we should be welcoming all conversations and opportunities for people to explore religion in a way that's right for them." So, in that statement, there's certainly a lot to quibble with. I mean, there's no mention of Jesus. There's no mention of repentance. There's no mention of changing her lifestyle. She talks about how OnlyFans girls are just 2D sex dolls, even though she helped create that exact marketplace, right? She created that phenomena, right? And then she adds that, she ends this whole thing with encouraging opportunities for people to explore religion in a way that's right for them, which obviously smacks of someone who just wants to kind of, a la carte their religious practices. Yeah, I'll take some of this. I'll do a little bit of that. Yeah, I don't want to do any of that stuff. That's going to be too difficult. I want to keep doing that. And beyond the statement, I think you'd be right to point out that she still has an active OnlyFans page where she is profiting off of the many videos of her having sex with men for money. She's advertising deplorable sex acts that she is scheduled to film imminently. And she has apparently a long history of pulling stunts like this to get attention. And I get all of that. But the main reason that I bring all this up today is because I was appalled by what I saw from a boatload of people that claim to be Christians after they saw this video. So when I looked at this video for the first time of her being baptized, right, knowing culturally who she is, never having consumed any of her pornographic content, but just knowing who she is culturally, my very first thought was, oh, praise God. Lily Phillips accepted Christ. This is incredible. Like, what kind of an impact could she have for the kingdom? What kind of an impact could she have for young ladies to tell them to avoid this? Because so many young women are getting caught up in this thing where they're showing their bodies online to try to get attention from men because they got daddy issues or just because they're non-Christians or whatever they're trying to do or just trying to get rich. Like, what an amazing turnaround. Man, the gospel is incredible. Praise God. And then I went to the comment section. In the comments, it was Christian after Christian after Christian, like, nah, this isn't real. Nah, this is just an act. Nah, she's just doing it for attention. There's no way that any of this could ever happen. And look, guys, I'm very skeptical by nature. And if you pair that with my default pessimism, it's hard for me to take anything at face value, especially initially. But like, I was actually kind of shocked that my first thought after seeing the baptism video wasn't doubt, because I normally just straight up doubt. But my first thought was like, this is incredible. This is so incredible. But when I went in the comments section, that was the first time I had considered that maybe this was an act. Like, I got wrapped up in the comments section, just again, Christian after Christian, some of whom I respect, that were just like, this isn't possible. Not for her. Not Lily Phillips. I mean, guys, it was as if Christians all over the world didn't want this to be true. They didn't want it to be true. Their desire to be right about Lily Phillips has overwhelmed their desire that she put her genuine faith in Christ for the propitiation of her sin debt, right? I mean, it is literally, they're rooting for her to go to hell. I mean, I was just absolutely flabbergasted by that. But do you know what I think is ultimately at the bottom of this? I think there are people out there who know the gospel, but they don't understand it. They can kind of, at least mimic back to you the words that sound like the gospel, but they don't really understand what it means. You see, because they think the gospel only works in some circumstances. They think the gospel applies, but, only up to a certain point and only up to a certain level of depravity and only for certain kinds of people. Like, yeah, I can understand Jesus saving some people with whorish tendencies and actions, but not Lily Phillips. I mean, she crossed the line a long time ago. And look, it's not just with sexual sin. There are people that think the gospel applies, but if you've ever had sex with someone that is the same gender as you, it can't apply for you. Like, there are people that think the gospel applies, but if you've ever murdered someone, then it can't apply for you, right? Like I remember recently it was something on, it was some show, but I saw the clip on like TikTok or Instagram or something like that. There was a guy, super tatted up guy, it's tatted up all over his face. And, he had been in prison and now he's out of prison, but he does a lot of prison ministry stuff now. And the host that was interviewing him asked him about Jeffrey Dahmer. And he said, so you think like Jeffrey Dahmer is in heaven now? Because, he said that he accepted Christ right at the end of his life. But I mean, this guy, he was a pet, he was a pedophile. He was a sodomizer. He murdered men. He ate parts of their bodies. He had so many dead bodies and dead parts around his apartment at the time that he was doing all this, that he had to like shower but he had like a dead body in the shower. So he was like literally showering every day over this dead body, like levels of depravity that we can't even fully understand and fathom for the most part. But you're telling me that he was saved after doing all that? And this guy that used to be in prison and all that, he goes, yeah, if he genuinely put in his faith in Christ, and yes, he's in heaven. And the host he just couldn't believe it. He was like coming apart at the seams. He just couldn't believe how anyone could possibly think that. But here's the thing about Lily Phillips. Y'all might be right. By the time some of you listen to this, the stunt may have been revealed. Like maybe this was all just a big ruse. Maybe the follow-up video to the baptism video will be her having sex with that same priest who is actually another porn actor and not actually a priest, and maybe they're going to have sex right in that same location. Yep, maybe. That might be the entire setup. But shouldn't we hope not? Shouldn't our desire be that the Holy Spirit moved so profoundly, and moved her in such a way that she recognizes her sins and sin nature and that she needs a savior, that she can't save herself, that she can't fill that gap that's in her heart and in her soul with money and attention? Shouldn't we want that? I mean, do you really want to be the kind of person that witnesses a baptism and your first thought is, nah, that ain't real. They don't mean it. Like I had this thought, like it made me so mad I could spit nails because like last year I participated in Church 1122's beach baptism where close to 2,000 people were baptized in one day. I was in line with Joby, and so I personally had a hand in, 100, 200, some odd, maybe more baptisms and things like that. Imagine being a guy on the beach with a clipboard of names, and as people are going in the water and professing faith in Christ and renouncing their attachments to anything dark and demonic in this world, and you going, nah, not that one. No, I know too much about that person. Do you know what that person's done? You know what that person's done? Yeah, that person just got dunked in the water in the ocean. No, I don't believe it. Is that the guy you want to be? Do you want to be the guy on the beach with a clipboard doubting, or do you want to be the people on the beach with the people on the beach that are screaming and praising and throwing sand and crap in the air when somebody gives their life to Christ and gets baptized, which is a public profession of an internal reality? Which guy do you want to be? The celebratory guy or the fuddy-duddy guy that's like, yeah, I don't believe it? I mean, go back to the scripture that I started the show with today. The Lord is not slow to fulfill his promise, as some count slowness, but is patient toward you, not wishing that any should perish, but that all should reach repentance. 2 Peter 3:9. I'll add another one, Romans 10:13. For everyone who calls on the name of the Lord will be saved. Yes, everyone. Murderers, rapists, child molesters, dictators, thieves, terrorists, and yes, porn stars. If people that have those titles on their resumes repent and put their faith in Christ, they will be saved. And that is simultaneously the beauty and the scandal of the gospel of Jesus Christ, that a perfect Jesus would be sent here by a perfect creator God to die for a bunch of non-perfect sinners. That's the scandal. But do you remember what I told you that back in 2024, that she had sex with over 100 men in a single day? Just heartbreaking. Heartbreaking for everyone involved. Well, there was a YouTuber named Josh Peters. So he was there that day. He was kind of doing a behind the scenes video, like documentary style, of what she was trying to do. So I had no interest in watching the video that he made. I did not watch the documentary. It's just not worth the temptation to me. But I did read a lot of think pieces and a lot of news stories and I used AI to kind of summarize what that video included. And so, in the video, he showed the planning and the logistics that went into this stunt. He talked to some of the guys that apparently were really excited about being, number 42 in a gangbang for that day. One guy apparently flew in from another country to participate. Think about that level of depravity. Lily kept, throughout the documentary, positioning herself as a business savvy person, like a CEO of a large company, playing up that whole feminism empowerment angle, right? Like, I'm doing this on purpose. I am in charge of my body, blah, 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 even though she's clearly not. But I remember this small clip that made the rounds back in 2024, right? When this, was going viral that she even did this. There was one clip that was very, very interesting to me. And so to set up this clip, Josh Peters, the documentarian, is interviewing Phillips after she's done. Okay. Apparently she had sex with 101 men over about 12 to 14 hours, right? And so she's kind of walking him through how it went, and she gave him an idea of how she greeted them all, and, talked to him before she had sex. He's asking her, like, hey, did you have anything to eat today? And she's like thinking to herself, she's like, well, I had a sandwich about 2 or 3 hours in, and, the only other thing I've eaten has been cum. Yeah, pretty rough. But then this exchange happens. Let's go to the clip here.
It's not for the weak, girls, if I'm honest. It was hard. I don't know if I'd recommend it.
Why not?
I think if you're a different type of girl, it's very it's kind of like being a prostitute in a sense of it's just a different feeling. I don't know how to explain it,
It's not like just having sex with someone.
Yeah. Just one in, one out, it feels intense.
Like more intense than you thought it might.
Definitely.
Sorry. It's okay. No, it's okay. Just take
yeah, 1 minute.
So for those of you, you don't really need to see it because you can kind of hear the interaction, but you can see in the video, she's really trying to maintain this girl boss energy, like she's in control and this was all part of the plan and all that. And she's trying to explain what she's just done as if she's just, got done, speaking at a conference or something. That's kind of how she's talking about this. It's actually really strange. It feels very, very much like a coping mechanism. And then she breaks down. She gets so upset that she has to leave the room while they're filming. And I mean, obviously the Peters guy, the documentarian, it's a very kind of weird moment. You can tell he's very contemplative at the moment, like what's going on? Like this is very, very heavy, very rough. And there's a word that comes to mind which would easily describe what she's feeling in that moment. Shame. She's feeling shame over what she's done. I mean, perhaps another word for it is conviction. Feeling convicted at what she had done. Now, none of us, and certainly I can't know this for sure, but I would bet anything that Lily Phillips, perhaps for the first time, or for the first time in a long time, realized what she had done, realized what she had been doing to herself for all these years, and she felt a rightful emotion of complete and utter shame and conviction. It's like you can see the Holy Spirit working in real time. So concerning the genuineness of the salvation of Lily Phillips, I personally am hopeful and prayerful that it is authentic. And I compel all of you to be hopeful and prayerful to that end as well. Hey guys, real quick. So I remember back in high school, I was training with these guys and they all got super jacked, but they were training and using these supplements that they were buying online, and a lot of them had crazy side effects. These were not good things. There's no telling what all was in these supplements. And so I've always kind of been scared about what supplements I'm going to put in my body. And I decided when I do start taking supplements, I want to make sure I'm using products that are certifiably clean and also using only high quality ingredients. And that's why I want to remind you guys that I have started taking and that we are partnered with Jocko Fuel. So Jocko Fuel is Jocko Willink's American-based supplement company. So what are they known for, and what are some of my favorite products that they make? They make a lot of whey protein powder. Their cookies and cream flavor is ridiculously good, especially with milk. And if you want to make some like peanut butter protein snack balls that a lot of people are making out there, that is a key ingredient. Also, they make the cleanest energy drinks that I've ever found, and my new favorite flavor is actually their latest flavor, which is Nitro Pop. Guys, it's incredible. They also have Jocko Hydrate drinks that are awesome because they are electrolyte drinks that aren't full of added sugar and artificial coloring and dyes and things like that. They also have the best tasting greens powder that I've ever had in my entire life, so you guys definitely have to check that out. But I also use their Creel oil, I use their fish oil, creatine, vitamin D, magnesium, joint warfare, and their sleep aids. And they have new stuff coming out all the time. Guys, if you take your health and wellness seriously, then you simply cannot afford to put cheap and inconsistent and dirty supplements inside your body. Try Jocko Fuel out today by going to jockofuel.com. That's jockofuel.com. Use the promo code Undaunted to get 10% off your order. Again, that's jockofuel.com. Promo code Undaunted to get 10% off your order. All right, let's get into the quick hitters. Anti-ICE protesters storming a church service in Minneapolis. So the funny thing about this, I wrote pretty much this entire episode middle of last week. And Friday, I was planning on recording it, but I'm like, man, I really felt like something was going to happen over the weekend. I was like, something's either going to happen in Iran or in Minneapolis. And it basically happened in both places, so I waited to kind of gather some stuff. But if it's not in your algorithm, right, on X or Instagram or something like that, some of you may have not even heard about this story because there's been a relative lack of news coverage on this story because, we'll get into the story here in a second. But as I describe what happens in the story, especially if you've not heard of what I'm going to be discussing, imagine what would be happening in the news cycle right now. Imagine what the discussions around the water cooler work would be right now if a bunch of people in MAGA hats carrying American flags stormed into a mosque in the middle of a service. So keep that in mind. This is according to the Daily Wire on January the 19th. The Department of Justice is investigating after a group of activists and ex-CNN host Don Lemon disrupted a church service in St. Paul, Minnesota on Sunday. Dozens of protesters crowded into City's Church in St. Paul on Sunday as part of the clandestine operation to disrupt business as usual, activist leader Nakima Levi Armstrong told Lemon, who embedded with the protest group. The protest lasted roughly 30 minutes and effectively ended the church service as it drove congregants out. Lemon interviewed Levi Armstrong ahead of Operation Pull-Up as the protest was called and followed agitators to City's Church, conducting interviews and at times arguing with members of the church and defending the free speech of the protesters, comparing the church invasion to the civil rights movement. So here's actually what the clip looked like.
So you can see the protesters here have gathered over here. They're in the middle of the church. In the beginning of the church service, the pastor was speaking, and Nakima stood up and said her piece, and then the protesters surrounded her. But this is a clandestine mission. I think they found out according to them, this is according to Operation Pull-Up, that one of the pastors here is a member of ICE. And so here we go.
You could talk to the lead pastor over there.
Yeah. Okay.
So obviously you see a bunch of people, a bunch of unemployed, sloppy people coming in. They're screaming something like "hands up, don't shoot," which goes back to Michael Brown, which was a completely made up thing. This young man was trying to kill a police officer and he died for his trouble. He never had his hands up begging for his life, but they've kind of resurrected that here even a decade after that, was dispensed with. And so they're disrupting the service. You can see kids that are very, very upset, and you can see a bunch of shocked parishioners. I just couldn't help as I was watching this video. I thought of the Jason Aldean song, "Try That in a Small Town," because they did this in the middle of Minneapolis. Fairly left-leaning, even the right-leaning people seem to be pretty chill. But man, try that in a small town in the South. Walk into a church like that and just see how well it goes for you, okay? Now, this was actually the response from Jonathan Parnell, who is the lead pastor of City's Church in Minneapolis, because Don Lemon, who was part of this entire thing, he got, in the pastor's face and he's asking him these questions. He's like doing this thing where he's cosplaying as a reporter. So let's go to the clip now.
What do you think of this?
I mean, this is unacceptable. It's shameful. It's shameful to interrupt a public gathering of Christians in worship.
But there were folks who will say,
I have to take care of my flock.
okay, but listen, we live there's a constitution in the First Amendment to freedom of speech and freedom to assemble and protest.
Yeah. We're here to worship. We're here to worship Jesus because that's the hope of these cities. That's the hope of the world is Jesus Christ.
I want to be very respectful. Please don't push me, though.
We're here to worship Jesus.
Yes.
That's why we're here.
Yeah.
Okay, that's why we're here.
Okay.
That's what we're about.
Don't you think Jesus would be understanding and
we're about
love these folks?
We're about spreading the love of Jesus.
But did you try to talk to them as a Christian?
No one is willing to talk.
Okay.
I have to take care of my church and my family, so I asked that you actually would also leave this building.
You don't want us to chronicle what happened?
Unless you're here to worship.
I'm always worship. I'm a Christian.
We're here to worship.
Yeah.
We're here to worship. Okay.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
All right, so real quick, can we make Jonathan Parnell famous? I mean, think of the dorks that we've made famous in the Christian space or the people that are famous in this space. Let's make this guy famous, okay? The poise, the power, and the control in that situation. I think he could have been a little bit more heavy-handed, but he wasn't. But yeah, let's hear more about Jonathan Parnell. But he said it was shameful, and it is shameful. Like, and I'm really glad that he was thinking about his flock in that moment, right? Because he could have had his viral moment. He could have had his, I'm standing up to tyranny or whatever the nonsense thing, statement that people would have been a fan of. But he was very concerned about his flock, and he kept taking things back to Jesus. But there's a few things I want to talk about in terms of the story. This is a direct attack on Christians meant to intimidate them, and it simply can't be tolerated. Okay? You have no right to do this. This is not within the boundaries of free speech. This is not within the boundaries of freedom of assembly. This is not within the boundaries of the free right to peaceably protest, because you do not have a right to trespass in the middle of a church service. You don't. Also, the leftists in this entire process, they were actually winning the PR battle, and they still might end up winning the war here when it comes to, immigration and immigration enforcement. But this was a huge misstep, because all we've seen is, just not that long ago, we had a leftist protester that was shot and killed, because of her own actions, right? Because she tried to run over an ICE officer with her vehicle. But most of the public doesn't see it that way. They're like, oh my gosh, ICE is shooting civilians now. What's going on? And they're dragging people away. And there was a 6-month-old that got tear gas the other day, even though we just forget to mention that 6-month-old was driven into the middle of a protest by their insane parent that wanted to basically stop ICE from doing what they're doing. And so that's why the 6-month-old was put into danger. That's what was happening. PR battle was being lost by the federal government, the Trump administration, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. But then you have people like this. Like, imagine being on the side of the people that interrupted the church service. Like, what kind of person do you have to be morally to look at that video and go, yeah, justified? You don't even have to be a Christian. Even as a non-Christian, shouldn't you be able to look at a video like that and think, that is disgusting. That's gross. So they're kind of losing the PR battle on this one. But again, we'll still see how the war goes. Also, if your church does not have a plan in place that the congregants know about, if something like this were to happen in their building, that is a massive problem that needs to be fixed ASAP. Like, I know there are a lot of pastors that listen to this podcast, a lot of elders of churches. We're very, very thankful for y'all. What is your plan? I mean, you need to have an active shooter plan. You need to have fire drill plan. You need to have everything, like where the kid's going to go, who's going to protect the kids, all those types of things. But what if something like this were to happen? What if 50 people stormed your church service? Whether you go to a small, country church or whether you go to big megachurch, what is the plan, and do the congregants know about it? Because they should. Also, Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey and Governor Tim Walz, it wouldn't surprise me at all if those two were dating, but, I digress from there. They have both said something along the lines of, the streets will be safe again when ICE leaves the city, which is incredibly insane for 3 reasons just off the top of my head. Immigration policy is not determined by states. That's number one, right? It's determined by the federal government, which is why federal law enforcement is in charge. Duh. Number 2, ICE is removing criminals from those streets, which inherently makes the streets safer. And number 3, ICE could remove these criminals much faster and much more safely if the state, city, and local populace would do the right and moral thing and get out of the way and even help them. Because as we're seeing, red states are deporting way more people than blue states. But you're like, wait a minute, I'm getting all the stories that, all the kerfuffles going on in blue states. Well, yes, because in red states, they're arresting these criminal illegal aliens, and then ICE is just picking them up from the jail. They're not having to drag them out of places of business. They're not having to drag them out of their homes. They're not having to, take them into custody with their kids watching, because the local magistrates are complying with everything going on. So right to my big takeaway on this one. Trump should stop this in the most aggressive legal way possible. So, arrest all rioters and protesters that are breaking the law with their actions and throw them in prison. Yes, you do have a right to peaceably protest in this country, but you do not have the right to impede law enforcement. So I thought about this the other day. Imagine if I drove up on a scenario and there's a police officer, he had pulled someone over, this person had meth in their car, and he's trying to take them into custody, right? But they're fighting. One cop versus one tweaker, they're fighting. Let's say I get out of my car, I run over there, I assist the cop. I help take the guy down. I help keep him there until he can cuff him, hold him there until the cavalry arrives. Like, okay, we're good to go, right? Like, I'm at least going to get a handshake from the police officers there. I might even get like a little plaque with my name on it that says, hey, thanks so much for being a good citizen, right? And then I get to move on with my life. But let's say I pull up to that same scenario and I run over and then I help the perp. I start fighting the cop along with the meth head. Now, when the cavalry arrives, right? Not only does the meth head get arrested, I get arrested for impeding and trying to help him escape, for helping him evade arrest. To which all of you would respond, well, yeah, duh, dummy. You helped him beat up a cop. You helped him get away from a cop. You helped him resist arrest. To which I would say, yeah. Now apply that to the situation with immigration and customs enforcement. Apply that same scenario. So, these rioters and protesters, while they're in the process of breaking the law, they should be arrested and thrown in prison, not just arrested and let out later on that afternoon. The Insurrection Act needs to be invoked. It is certainly necessary at this point. You send in the military and you stop this because the moral, good people of Minneapolis are suffering right now because of these leftist agitators that are being paid to do what they're doing. This is an organized insurrection happening in that state. It's happening other places in the country as well. It needs to be put down. But also, Trump needs to utilize the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act to throw these losers in prison for maximum sentences. Okay, so this is according to the DOJ. The Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act, or FACE Act, prohibits the use or threat of force and physical obstruction that injures, intimidates, or interferes with a person seeking to obtain or provide reproductive health services or to exercise the First Amendment right of religious freedom at a place of religious worship. Now, if we go back to the Biden administration, do you remember when the FBI did middle-of-the-night raids to arrest and imprison men and women, some of them elderly women, because they prayed outside of abortion clinics? Yeah, the Biden DOJ got these people put in prison because they were praying for people outside of abortion clinics, praying that they wouldn't murder their children. Now, for leftists and Democrats, their place of worship are places like Planned Parenthood, abortion facilities, those types of things. But for other people that aren't as wretched, we go to church, right? We go to evangelical churches where we sing about the glory of God and then we hear the gospel preached, hopefully, in those two cases, right? So if the federal government can make the FACE Act apply to elderly women praying for women outside of an abortion facility, not blocking their entrance into it, certainly people that are storming into churches in the middle of service are violating the FACE Act. So those people need to be arrested, prosecuted, and thrown into prison. And the only disincentive, right, and you guys know this if you have kids, the only disincentive for bad behavior in the future is decisive action now. Think about it with your kid. If your kid is drawing on the wall and you go, you do the whole gentle parenting bull crap and you're like, oh my gosh, it seems like there was a decision that you made. Can you tell me a little bit more about that decision? Oh, I just wanted to do it. I just wanted to write on the wall. Wow, that is so interesting. Now, there was probably something in your past that really led you start the uptalk thing. It probably led you to this moment where you thought it would be okay to express your artistic desires, but you did it on a canvas that we don't want that to happen. So if you're that type of person, do not be shocked if the rest of the walls in your house are covered with marker. Maybe by the end of the day, okay? Because what you need is decisive action to stop the bad behavior. Because here's the other thing that we know about these people. These people are zealots. They're not tough guys. The moment you cuff them and put them in prison and they have to stay there, they will crack and fall to pieces. A lot of these people are mentally ill. And I'm not saying that as a thing to dunk on them. It's just a fact. They're mentally ill individuals. And so you put them in a prison environment, this is not going to be good for them. You want to talk about disincentivizing people? I mean, I'm not sure George Soros could pay people enough money if they're like, wait a minute. Hey, you told me that, we were just going to go and we were going to throw rocks and we were going to yell and we were going to disrupt church services. And then even if we got arrested, we would get out that day or the next day. But hey, my buddy just got thrown in prison and he got like a 15-year sentence. Yeah, I'm not going to take this money to go do that thing. It's because the actions are decisive. There's never been a time, perhaps in the history of this country, where this would be more appropriate, especially with some of the things that the Trump administration is considering doing. Yes, Democrats and leftists would love nothing more than to take pictures of protesters being, taken down and arrested by United States military and all those types of things. It just feeds into their narrative that Trump is a fascist. He's all these different things. But here's the deal, Trump administration. They're saying that about you anyway. They have convinced millions of Americans that you are already a fascistic dictator. And so even if you put the military in these towns to quell these rebellions, to put down the people that are trying to stop law enforcement from doing their jobs and risking the law enforcement people's lives, even if you do that, it wouldn't even make you a dictator, but they're going to call you one anyway. So forget about what it could do to the midterms or what it could do for the next general election. You've got to end this now. All right, next one here. This will actually be pretty quick because I wanted to do an update on the uprising in Iran. The thing about it, though, there's nothing that we can really surmise. We know that the death toll is in the thousands right now. We know that people are being shot indiscriminately in the streets. The number of thousands is impossible to know right now. They've shut down the internet. They've indicated that they will shut down the internet until March of this year. I mean, who knows what all that's about. The rights organizations that are on the ground there, it's really hard for them to get an accurate count and get information out. But we do know that the military is posted up in the streets. They have, through loudspeakers, warned the local populace that if they come out or if they, galvanize or anything like that, they will be put down. And so it's hard to really know exactly what's going on. But I do have a couple of observations and then a big takeaway. So why have some of the same people been so quick to challenge the execution numbers coming out of Iran, but just went with whatever Hamas said during their war with Israel? I've seen this from people on the left and the right. They're like, well, I mean, have that many people really been put down by the Iranian regime? But then whatever Hamas said, they were like, yeah, that's what's happening. There's totally, a lot of executions going on by Hamas. There's a genocide. So that's kind of weird. And I'm also curious, where are all the leftists in the West cheering these Iranian revolutionaries on? Where are they? Because these are people that are like revolution for revolution's sake, and yet they're not anywhere at this moment. They don't want the Iranian regime to be overthrown, which takes me back to last week's episode. You should check that out. Last Thursday's episode 866, talking about Islamic collectivism, talking about these leftists and these Muslims and how the strange bedfellows are now cooperating with one another. I just find that to be really, really interesting. But I do want to do my big takeaway on this one, and I'm just basically doubling down on what I said last week. No matter what happens in Iran, the next regime will be an Islamic one, right? Of course. Now, it may not be Islamist, right? It may not be the greatest sponsor of terrorism in the world, but it will be Islamic. I mean, not all Muslims are violent, but Islam is incredibly and inherently violent. And history is directional, right? It does go in a particular direction, and we are heading towards the eventual clash of the right side and the wrong side, which is Christianity and Islam, okay? So we should be praying for our Christian brothers and sisters there in Iran. We should be praying for Muslims there in Iran that are under the thumb of the regime, that Christ would come to them. Again, we see a bunch of stories of Muslims converting to Christianity in their dreams because they see Jesus. Jesus speaks to them and talks to them in their dreams. We should be praying for that. We should be praying for that entire situation, but it's hard to really know what's going to happen as we move forward on that one. Our next quick hitter here, the United Arab Emirates cutting funds for students that want to study abroad in the UK because of fears of radicalization. This is a crazy story. This is according to Financial Times on January the 8th. The United Arab Emirates has restricted funding for its students or its citizens who want to study at British universities, the latest sign of tensions over the UK's decision not to prescribe the Islamist Muslim Brotherhood. The list includes universities in countries including the United States, Australia, Israel, and France, but not the UK, which is home to many of the world's top academic institutions. The exclusion of British universities is linked to anxiety in the UAE over what it sees as the risk of Islamist radicalization on UK campuses, according to 3 people familiar with the matter. So, big takeaway on this one. You know that your Christian country has fallen when Muslim countries are banning their Muslim citizens from coming to your country out of fear that they will turn into Muslim terrorists. I mean, just think about that. I remember when I heard this, I'm like, I had to have heard this wrong. And then I read it and it's like, oh my gosh. Because the UAE, they're seen as kind of the most moderate, right? So they've got these beautiful new cities there that they built in the middle of the desert. And like, hey, they're as moderate gets on Islam, and, you know, great places to live and great places to do all the different things and all that. And they're terrified that if their sons and daughters go to the UK, that if they go to their universities, that they will come back radicalized, right? Or more fundamentalized in terms of what Islam actually teaches. It's simply astonishing. And again, I have people that'll reach out to me from the UK. They're fans of the show. I don't know what to tell them because the UK has fallen. It's already fallen to Islam, right? So you have the socialistic policies, you have the left-leaning policies, you have, you know, the universal healthcare there, which is failing, and it's not going well for the citizenry. If you are proud at all of your English heritage, you are automatically deemed a racist. The people that are running your country are absolute lunatics. Like, I thought Brexit was going to be a great thing for y'all, but then you broke away from the EU, but then you elected a bunch of leaders that were like crazy people, like literally insane people. And so I don't really know what to say, but there needs to be a revolution in the UK, right? I don't know that you can really undo what y'all have done with just complete open immigration, especially from Muslim countries, but it is absolutely sad to see one of the great, you know, virtuous countries, one of the great Christian countries to fall because of their own doing. All right, next quick hitter here. The opening arguments being heard by the Supreme Court in a case involving trans girls, so-called trans girls, participating in girls' sports. So this is according to USA Today on January the 13th. The Supreme Court is taking up one of the nation's most high-profile and divisive cultural issues, debating on January the 13th whether states can bar transgender girls and women from joining female sports teams in schools. The challenges to ban in West Virginia and Idaho came a year after a high court ruled that states can prevent transgender minors from receiving puberty blockers and hormone therapy. So now, right from the jump, you can see the media spin all over the place, even in the story. Again, go back to the story. It says, transgender girls and women from joining female sports teams. It's boys. Boys that are wanting to join the girls' team, men that are wanting to join the women's team. Okay. But again, the language battle is still continuing apace. So that's communicating in the assumptive voice, right? Meaning that they're writing in a way that assumes the reader believes it is a foregone conclusion that there is such a thing as transgender boys or transgender girls, right? It's just a super nefarious thing, but it's very subtle. Now, the decision in this case is not expected until late spring or early summer, but we've already gotten a few hints as to how this might shake out. So here's actually an interaction between Justice Samuel Alito, maybe the most conservative justice is either him or Thomas, and the ACLU lawyer arguing the case, Kathleen Hartnett. So let's actually go to the clip here.
An understanding of what it means to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman.
Yes, Your Honor.
And what is that definition? For equal protection purposes, what does it mean to be a boy or a girl or a man or a woman?
Sorry, I misunderstood your question. I think that the underlying enactment, whatever it was, the policy, the law, we'd have to have an understanding of how the state or the government was understanding that term to figure out whether or not someone was excluded. We do not have a definition for the court. And we don't take issue with we're not disputing the definition here. What we're saying is that the way it applies in practice is to exclude birth sex males categorically from women's teams, and that there's a subset of those birth sex males where it doesn't make sense to do so according to the state's own interest.
Well, how can a court determine whether there's discrimination on the basis of sex without knowing what sex means for equal protection purposes?
So Alito's just a gangster here, and this kind of proves that someone like this lawyer, Kathleen Hartnett, she's probably very smart, very high IQ, probably has a couple of fancy law degrees and things like that. But then she's basically got the brain rot of leftism in her brain that keeps her from being able to answer a very simple question. And speaking of which, then we have Ketanji Brown Jackson, of the I'm not a biologist fame, right? She is somehow on the Supreme Court of the United States, even though I'm not sure that she could effectively butter 2 pieces of bread and put it in the toaster. So she was asked what a woman was during her confirmation hearings, right? And she said, I'm not a biologist. But then she said this during the same time that Alito is talking with this lawyer and all that. She had this exchange, and I have the transcript here. I'm just going to read it, and I'm not going to add anything to it. I'm going to read it exactly as she said it. You have the overarching classification, everybody has to be play on the team that is the same as their sex at birth. But then you have a gender identity definition that is operating within that, meaning a distinction, meaning that for cisgender girls, they can play consistent with their gender identity. For transgender girls, they can't. I mean, she's obviously basically modern day Cicero, right? I mean, why would Joe Biden have selected anybody else? He definitely didn't select her just because she was a black woman, right? She was certainly the most qualified person. Just her history of jurisprudence and her ability to make cogent arguments was obviously on display there. I mean, guys, holy Moses, this person's on the Supreme Court. Anyway, let's go to the big takeaway on these last 2. When the ruling finally comes down, it will be 6-3 at a minimum. Okay, that's my read here. To uphold the rights of states to prevent males from competing in female sports. I don't know, maybe ACB or maybe Gorsuch, I don't know. They've had some flummoxing decisions, but I think it's going to be at least 6-3. I think the gender revolution is dying, and this will be one of the nails in the coffin. Because if you can't answer a basic question about what we know to be true, something that's not even debatable, then it just shows that your position has no foundation. Which goes right in the next quick hitter here. A witness in a congressional hearing refusing to answer the question, can men get pregnant? This hurts my brain, but last week, Congress held a hearing on the risks, or it was 2 weeks ago, on the chemical abortion drugs like mifepristone, right? Because chemical abortions are way more ubiquitous now than surgical abortions are. All of them need to be banned. But obviously, if you can just get a pill in the mail and kill your baby without even having to go in and face the shame of sitting on a table to get your baby killed, obviously more women are going to opt for that. But one of the witnesses in support of abortion is an abortionist named Dr. Nisha Verma. So abortionist is, her most appropriate title. She's a mass murderer, but she is also an OBGYN and a medical school professor at Emory University, okay? So she was the witness that the Democrats called to represent their position in the hearing because, need I remind you, they are the party of death. So, of course, they love and support abortion for any reason at any point of pregnancy and paid for by taxpayers. So Senator Josh Hawley of Missouri, who's fantastic, also an alumni of the show, began to question her. And it led to this viral exchange. Let's go and go to the video.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since you bring it up, why don't we just start there? Dr. Verma, I wasn't sure I understood your answer to Senator Moody a moment ago. Do you think that men can get pregnant?
I hesitated there because I wasn't sure where the conversation was going or what the goal was. I mean, I do take care of patients with different identities. I take care of many women. I take care of people with different identities. And so that's where I paused. I think, I wasn't sure where you were going with that.
Well, the goal is just the truth. So can men get pregnant?
Again, the reason I paused there is I'm not really sure what the goal of the question is.
The goal is just to establish a biological reality. You just said a moment ago that science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So let's just test that proposition. Can men get pregnant?
I take care of people with many identities, but
can men get pregnant?
I take care of many women that can get pregnant. I do take care of people that don't identify as women. That
can men get pregnant?
Again, as I'm saying,
let me just remind you what you testified to a moment ago. Science and evidence should control, not politics. Absolutely. So can men get pregnant? You're a doctor, I think.
Science and evidence should guide medicine.
Do science and evidence tell us that men can get pregnant? Biological men, can they get pregnant?
I also think yes/no questions like this are a political tool. And
no, yes/no questions are about the truth, doctor. Let's not make a mockery of this proceeding. This is about science and evidence, and I'm asking you. The United States Supreme Court just heard arguments yesterday at great length on this question. This is not a hypothetical question. This is not theoretical. It affects real people in their real lives. And you're here as an expert, called by the other side as an expert. And you've been telling us that you follow, right, you're a doctor, and you follow the science and the evidence. So I just want to know, based on the science, can men get pregnant? That's a yes or no question. It really is, I think.
I think you're trying to reduce the complexity of a lot.
I'm not. I'm trying to get, it's not complex. I'm trying to get to an answer, and I'm trying to test, frankly, your veracity as a medical professional and as a scientist. Can men get pregnant?
I think you're also conflating
This is
male
extraordinary.
female with
No, I'm not conflating male and female. They're two different things. There's biological men and there's biological women. And I want to know, can men get pregnant?
What you were talking about is biological.
You're not going to answer my question, it sounds like.
Biological males.
This isn't hard, doctor. Can men get pregnant? Yes or no?
Again, I would be more than happy to have a conversation with you that is not coming from a place of trying to be polarized and push.
I'm not trying to be polarizing. I'm trying to ask, I think it is extraordinary that we are here in a hearing about science and about women. And for the record, it's women who get pregnant, not men. We are here about the safety of women and science that shows that this abortion drug causes adverse health events in 11% of cases. That's 22 times greater than the FDA label, another fact you haven't acknowledged, and yet you won't even acknowledge the basic reality that biological men don't get pregnant. There's a difference between biological men and biological women. I don't know how we can take you seriously and your claims to be a person of science if you won't level with this on this basic issue. I thought we were past all of this, frankly. I can't believe we're still here talking about this.
I mean, guys, if you weren't wanting to peel your skin off during that interaction, I mean, the level of insanity is just gobsmacking. I mean, again, this woman teaches at a medical school. So she's clearly passing on this garbage ideology to the next generation of doctors. So yippee, hooray, what possible ramifications could that have for humanity? But I'll go to my big takeaway here. There is only one reason why she refused to answer the question. Because it is impossible for liberals or leftists to be intellectually honest. It's impossible. Because if they're intellectually honest, then they have no basis for the thing that they just said that they're now trying to defend. Right? Because here's the thing, there's really only two categories. There are the true believers, and then there are the people that will just say everything that they need to say. So the true believers are the people that actually believe this stuff. They actually believe that men can become women, women can become men. They have some sort of mental illness, or they're very low IQ, they're very impressionable, they're the true believers. And then there are the people that are just going to say anything that they need to say. This woman knew that if she answered in the way that she knew, because I don't get the sense that this woman's a true believer. I think she's an ideologue, but I think her brain does function well enough to where she knows the biological reality that, of course, men can't get pregnant. That's preposterous. It violates everything that we know about everything. But if she were to say that, she would not be invited to the Planned Parenthood functions. She would not be invited to the next Democratic establishment or administration. She's not going to be invited to the White House. She's not going to be invited to speak at these conferences where they get a bunch of baby murderers together and they celebrate how efficiently they kill babies. She's not going to be invited to any of those cocktail parties anymore. Because there are things that you can say and cannot say. And if you violate those stipulations, you're out of the group, right? And it's because they lack basic intellectual honesty. Hey guys, real quick. I know a lot of you train for very specific things. So maybe you've got a mud race coming up, a mountain hunt, a 5K, or maybe you just want to keep up with your kids, or you just don't want to let the old man in. But for a lot of you guys, whether you're working out at the Globo gym or even in your garage gym, you get there and you just don't know exactly what to do. And so you just kind of settle for the same old workout routine, maybe some bench press, bicep curls, a walk on the treadmill, and you know you're not really getting the most out of your workout plan. And I want you guys to stop wasting time at the gym. No more settling. It's time for you guys to get a guide to help you reach your fitness goals. And that's why I want to remind you about my good friends at Mountain Tough. Mountain Tough is a fitness and mental toughness app developed by military special operators and mountain hunters that's becoming a global movement for building mentally tough athletes on and off the mountain. Mountain Tough is a native app ready to be downloaded on all platforms, so that includes iPhone, Android, Apple TV, Roku, and there's more. Once you sign up and download the app or access the website, you immediately have access to hundreds of exercise programs and literally thousands of workout videos, thousands. So that includes structured hybrid strength and endurance programs, daily workouts, the full exercise library, mental toughness training, the Mountain Tough community, and accountability. And you can use it all on the go, online or offline, no matter where you decide to train. So if you're just getting started, that's great. They have programs for beginners. If you have minimal or no gear where you train, that's not a factor. They have minimal gear and body weight programs. And guys, if you're wanting to get into or maintain elite level fitness, they've got you covered with programs for top tier athletes too. And for a limited time, Mountain Tough is extending Undaunted Lifers like you an incredible offer. Go to mountaintough.com. That's MTNtough.com and enter the code Kyle when you sign up for a monthly plan to receive your first month free after your 14-day trial. So that's 6 weeks free to make sure this is for you. I'm sure it will be. That is 6 weeks free on the best-in-class physical and mental training app in the world. So stop wasting time. It's time to get real fitness results. Let my friends at Mountain Tough guide the way. Again, go to MTN Tough. That's mountaintough.com, promo code Kyle. All right, next quick hitter here. Chinese billionaires using U.S. surrogates and IVF technology to build mega families. So this is according to First Post on December the 15th, and they were basically summarizing what the Wall Street Journal put out. Over the past decade, an increasing number of affluent Chinese individuals, some of them billionaires, have turned to American surrogacy arrangements to build families of unprecedented size, the Wall Street Journal has reported. In extreme cases, these efforts have gone beyond personal parenthood and into ambitions that may aid in establishing an entire dynasty. Within China's elite circles, a growing number of individuals are using overseas surrogacy to pursue family sizes that would be impossible, both legally and logistically, within China. Zhu Bo, who's a Chinese billionaire, it's spelled XU space BO, so I think it's Zubo, has publicly embraced his identity. He refers to himself as China's first father, and his company has claimed on social media that he has more than 100 children born through surrogacy in the United States. Other wealthy Chinese figures have pursued similarly controversial paths. Wang Haiwu, president and CEO of Sichuan-based XJ International Holdings, is said by people close to his education company to have fathered 10 girls via U.S. surrogacy arrangements. Wang reportedly recruited egg donors from diverse professional backgrounds, including fashion models, a finance PhD holder, and a musician. The cost of each egg donation was said to range between $6,000 and $7,500. Those close to Wang said he preferred daughters and hoped they would eventually marry influential global figures. The ability of wealthy Chinese clients to commission large numbers of children abroad has been enabled by a highly developed transitional fertility industry. Industry professionals say oversight is so limited that it is often impossible to determine whether a single intended parent is commissioning multiple pregnancies across different jurisdictions. Surrogacy agencies typically earn between $40,000 and $50,000 per arrangement, excluding payments made directly to the surrogate. Additional costs covering IVF procedures, legal services, insurance, childcare, and logistics can push the total cost per child to nearly $200,000. In some cases, Chinese parents have managed the entire process remotely. Experts say it has become possible for intended parents to send genetic material abroad, oversee pregnancies via intermediaries, and arrange for newborns to be collected from hospitals and placed with caregivers, all without entering the United States themselves. I hate most of what I just had to read, but here's the big takeaway on this one. The United States will remain the wild, wild west for the fertility industry as long as we allow it to be. But we can change it. I want to flow right into the next story because these are related. OpenAI CEO Sam Altman saying that he uses ChatGPT to help raise his son with his husband. This is according to Distractify via MSN. Most parents look to the internet for help and advice as they navigate having an infant, then a toddler, and so on. So when OpenAI CEO Sam Altman admitted that he uses ChatGPT to help him with parenting, it was like a relatable parent moment for people who aren't the leaders of multi-billion-dollar companies. Unlike fellow AI leader Elon Musk, Sam doesn't have a bevy of kids and baby mamas to contend with. However, given that he has opened up about fatherhood and the place of AI in parenting, it might leave some wondering how big a role he allows technology to play in his life as a parent, short of using ChatGPT for advice, and what his plans are for his growing family. And so, as we get into all that, you look at this like, all right, that makes sense. Like he's using ChatGPT. to kind of get advice on parenting. Some people that don't have, parents around or grandparents around, maybe they could go to ChatGPT. But, whoops, there's a part of the story that some people may have not realized. So we'll go back to the article here. Sam and his husband, Oliver, welcomed their son together through a surrogate in February of 2025. As of December 2025, the couple has just one child, and Sam told Jimmy Fallon on The Tonight Show he cannot imagine raising a newborn and figuring out what to do without the assistance of AI and ChatGPT specifically. Now you might think that I would address the AI stuff here, and that's certainly relevant to the story, but again, we need to look at how these gay men were able to, quote unquote, start a family. Well, it's really just three things: IVF, surrogacy, and banning such procedures from being outside of the Overton window. Or I guess you could add a fourth thing: money. So without IVF, these men would not be able to swirl their sperm after they jerk off into a cup, swirl their sperm, and then join it with a egg, right? A donated egg or a purchased egg from somewhere. Without IVF, they wouldn't be able to do that. And then also, if there wasn't surrogacy, they wouldn't be able to take that egg that was created in a lab and put it into the rented womb of a woman who will sustain and give nutrients from her body to the baby's body for roughly 9 months, and then have to just hand it over to these two narcissistic gay men. And when I talk about, banning such procedures being outside of the Overton window, try bringing this up, because I've done it. I give you the moral case against IVF, and I've lost friendships. I've certainly lost sponsorships. I've had people try to destroy business relationships because I simply laid out the moral case against killing a whole bunch of designer babies in the pursuit of a growing family because of the moral ramifications that we're seeing. Talk about surrogacy publicly and how that's bad, and you're going to get lambasted by people that are like, well, these women are being paid, in some cases $75,000 to carry these babies, and it's their body, their choice, and blah, blah, blah. Okay. But it's outside the Overton window. The Overton window is the acceptable discourse within a body politic or a culture on a particular topic. So tell me the last prominent Republican politician you've heard talk about how we need to ban IVF and surrogacy. Who's the, prominent Republican that has said, yeah, gay couples and lesbian couples should not be able to adopt children or create designer children to have in their families. It's not good for the culture. It's not good for families, and it's certainly not good for those children. And also, it's certainly not good for the image bearers of God, the human beings that are sacrificed and killed during the process, right? Because need I remind you, you create 10 to 12 embryos. You may only implant 3 or 4. The rest are just put on ice, essentially, until they're sold for medical research or just thrown away. Very few of them get adopted, right? And there's millions of children in the world right now that are in that frozen state. But we can't talk about it because it might offend some people, right? Because there are Christians out there that have grown their families with IVF, and why would anyone ever say something is bad? But as a lot of people have pointed out, because there's a blessing on the back end, it doesn't mean the circumstances to get to the blessing were moral. Right? So think about an extreme situation. A rapist rapes a woman, impregnates her. The woman does the right thing and does not kill that baby because it wasn't the baby's fault. She takes that baby to term, either raises it as her own or gives it up for adoption. That human being that is alive right now outside the womb is a blessing from God, an image bearer of God, and we hope that they give their life to Christ and serve him for the entirety of their life. Does that make the rape moral? No. So yes, it may seem sanitized because a rape takes place in a back alley or a dirty, hotel room, but you're going to a nice office with air conditioning and plants in the corner, and you think, oh, well, this is morally neutral. But let's go to my big takeaway on this one. It's just like the previous quick hitter. The United States will remain the wild, wild west for fertility in the industry as long as we allow it to be, but we can change it. We can change it. We can say, no more of this. No more narcissistic, rich gay men paying for designer babies. No more Chinese billionaires writing a bunch of checks to send their sperm across the ocean to be put into the wombs of models, right, or to be combined with the eggs of models to be put into another woman, a surrogate, to carry them, and then a paid nanny comes to the hospital to pick up the newborn baby, not from its biological mother, not from the mother that carried it, but it's a different woman now. And then the daddy is never really part of the process. He certainly wasn't part of the conjugal union to create this child. You know, we can stop this. You know, we can demand change for that. And also some other quick notes on this story. Matt Walsh actually pointed this out, and he's completely right about this. For years, we were told that gay men just want to adopt. That's what we were told. Just give gay men the chance to give an orphan a good life, right? Would you rather a kid be an orphan or for them to be adopted by a gay family? That was what we were told. You know, stuff like that. And yet here we are in 2026, and what are gay couples doing? They're not adopting babies. They're making designer babies via IVF process, placing those babies inside the rented wombs of a woman who's almost never the egg donor, and then taking the baby away from that woman after birth and giving her some sort of money for her troubles. And you know what we're also not supposed to talk about? We're still not supposed to notice that gay men always seem to prefer male children. Male children that in some cases they adopt, but in a lot of cases they design, that will live in their homes without supervision. We're supposed to not notice that. We're supposed to not think that that's weird in any way, shape, or form. But here we go. As long as we allow this as a culture, it will continue to happen, and it will continue to get worse. All right, now we're going to go to a section of stories directly from the Trump administration now. The Trump administration changing the recommended vaccine schedule for children. This is according to the White House on December the 5th, aligning the childhood vaccine schedule with international best practices. Today, President Donald J. Trump signed a presidential memorandum to begin the process to align U.S. core childhood vaccine recommendations with best practices from peer-developed countries. So the recommendation from the federal government now is that we should vaccinate children against 11 different diseases, which is down from 17. So the ones remaining are measles, mumps, rubella, polio, diphtheria, tetanus, pertussis, Haemophilus. Oh man, that's bad. That's a type of influenza type B. Sorry, did not pronounce that well at all. And then pneumococcal disease, and then HPV. Now it's 1 dose instead of 2 or 3, and chickenpox. But they did remove the recommendations for COVID-19, seasonal influenza, hepatitis A, hepatitis B, rotavirus, meningococcal, and then RSV. So all the medical people in my audience. Sorry, I'm half retarded. It's just kind of how it goes. Big takeaway on this one though. I would not count myself as an anti-vaxxer. I wouldn't, but I am definitely at this point vax skeptical, and we currently do not have legitimate studies to remove all skepticism about the long-term impacts of vaccines on Americans. I think there's a lot of things happening right now that's leading to childhood obesity, just overall issues with development. I think it has to do with the vaccines. I think it has to do with microplastics. I think it has to do with things that are in our food supply, but I think this is a net positive. For our boys, we look back now and we're like, crap, we should not have given some of these vaccines. We don't know what the issues are going to be for their health long term. And we know people that have had some significant vaccine injuries in their families. But I think that this is certainly a positive thing from the Trump administration. Next one here, the Trump administration flipping the food pyramid. This according to the White House on January the 8th. The Trump administration's updated dietary guidelines represent the most significant reset of federal nutrition policy in decades by prioritizing real food, not ultra-processed foods, added sugars, and refined carbohydrates. These guidelines restore common sense and science to health policy, putting real food back at the center of preventing chronic diseases and promoting lifelong wellness. So let's actually go ahead and put up the food pyramid now. Landon, let's go ahead and put that up there. Look at the new food pyramid, okay? Let's go ahead and leave that up for a little bit while we talk about it. So you can kind of see you have the normal food pyramid where it's like, you got all these grains and stuff that needs to be the thing that you need to do. But yeah, it's basically flipped. I mean, you need to have meat, you need to have eggs, you need to have, butter, you need to have things that are high in nutrition, high in dense protein, right? Bioavailable protein. All that stuff is right there at the top. So I think that is just absolutely spectacular. But now let's go to my big takeaway on this one. People in the know have known that the food pyramid was not the legit pyramid for a long time, okay? The new food pyramid is. I mean, there have been people that have been in the know for a very, very long time, but there's still a lot of people that point to the old food pyramid that's been around for decades. And it will take potentially generations to change the eating habits of Americans. Okay? I think it's a righteous thing. I hope that the next administration after this doesn't do anything to turn this around. And I hope that you start seeing this. I hope that you have your kids, whether they go to public school or private school or whatever, coming home and you see the food pyramid as it stands now, upside down from where it was. I hope that you see that in their homework. I hope that they are learning that. Because if you can put in a kid's head for decades that, eating meat's bad and you really should eat a bunch of breads and a bunch of cereals and a bunch of junk like that does nothing for your body, especially with the enriched grain and all the different things now, I think that would be a very, very good thing. But it is going to take a while to turn this ship. All right, next one here, the Trump administration ending the temporary protected status designation for Somalians. So this is according to the Homeland Security Office on March the 17th. Today, the United States Secretary, no, not March 17th, I think that would be January 17th. Apologies. Today, the United States Secretary of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, announced the termination of Somalia's designation for temporary protected status, TPS. The termination will be effective on March 17th of 2026. Temporary means temporary. Country conditions in Somalia have improved to the point that it no longer meets the law's requirement for temporary protected status, said Secretary Noem. Further, allowing Somali nationals to remain temporarily in the United States is contrary to our national interests. We are putting America first. Somalia's designation expires March 17th of 2026. So there you go. So not mentioned in the short announcement is what year the country of Somalia gained this temporary protected status. 1991. 1991. So for an unbelievable length of time, Somalians have been able to come here under the guise of temporary protected status. The big takeaway here, if your country can't get its crap together in 30 plus years, then it's not a country. Like if your country is so poorly ran or so corrupt that for 30 plus years, we can't even trust that your people should be able to stay there, that we have to have them here in this country, and then they don't assimilate. Obviously, there's a lot of fraud that happens from these people in these countries. They bring their third world values to the first world, which causes a lot of issues. It's just not a country. And if you don't have a country, that means your country, your land, and your people should be confiscated, right? Should be taken over. Because that's how it's worked for the entirety of human history, right? If you couldn't defend your borders, if you couldn't defend your nation, if you couldn't provide for your people, you weren't a country. Now, a lot of people in Somalia, there's been a lot of, inbreeding that's gone on there. I think per capita, they have the lowest IQ of any country on the planet Earth. There's a lot of issues there. To unravel the issues that have happened there is not just like a quick, easy fix that you can snap your finger and make it happen. But this is obviously the right decision. We should no longer be taking people into this country and making them immediately dependent on the taxpayer. And we're going to have more on that here in just a second. Next quick hitter, the Trump administration planning to cut federal funding to so-called sanctuary cities. This is according to Fox News on January the 13th. President Donald Trump said his administration will cease federal payments to sanctuary cities and states without sanctuary policies starting February 1st, while citing jurisdictions that protect criminals and fuel fraud and crime. So most Republicans have just said they're going to do stuff like this. I mean, the number of Republicans that are trying to get into office, trying to maintain their seats or whatever, they say stuff like this and then they get into office and they don't do anything legislatively that's anywhere close to this. But second-term Trump is just doing the thing, right? He says he's going to do the thing and then he just does the thing, which really goes into the next quick hitter, which is the Trump administration freezing visas for welfare-dependent migrants. These last three stories are all connected, but this is according to Breitbart on January the 14th. President Donald Trump's State Department is freezing all visa processing from 75 countries that agencies have discovered produce waves of welfare-dependent migrants to the United States. These countries where visa processing will be frozen are, so buckle up, here we go, Afghanistan, Albania, Algeria, Antigua and Barbuda. I guess that's Barbuda. Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bahamas, Bangladesh, Barbados, Belarus, Belize, Bhutan, Bosnia, Brazil, Burma, Cambodia, Cameroon, Cape Verde, Colombia, Cote d'Ivoire, Cuba, Congo, Dominicana, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Fiji, Gambia, Georgia, Ghana, Grenada, Guatemala, Guinea, Haiti, Iran, Iraq, Jamaica, Jordan, Kazakhstan, Kosovo, Kuwait, Kyrgyzstan, Laos, Lebanon, Liberia, Libya, Macedonia, Moldova, Mongolia, Montenegro, Morocco, Nepal, Nicaragua, Nigeria, Pakistan, Russia, Rwanda, St. Kitts and Nevis, St. Lucia, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, Senegal, Sierra Leone, Somalia, South Sudan, Syria, Tanzania, Thailand, Togo, Tunisia, Uganda, Uruguay, Uzbekistan, and Yemen. So the move comes after Trump shared data of welfare use among immigrant groups in the United States, showing that more than 81% of migrant households from Bhutan are on welfare, as well as 75% of households from Yemen, 72% of households from Somalia, 71% of households from Marshall Islands, 68% of the households from the Dominican Republic, 68% of households from Afghanistan, and 66% of households from the Congo, among others. So really, for this entire slate of Trump administration stories, here's my big takeaway on that. This is exactly what I voted for. This is exactly what I voted for. Okay? Countries were given to us. The idea for countries and borders was given to us by God. Borders mean something, and our magistrates, they have power that is derived from God that should lead to the flourishing of the people in that country and in that territory. You cannot make a significantly positive argument to keep the borders open, to keep migrants here that are not assimilating to our way of life, that are suckling from the teat of the American taxpayer, and we can't keep importing people from all these other areas and taking care of them here in our country. It's not sustainable. The United States cannot be a dominant, hegemonic force for good in the world if we are destroyed from within by people that are eroding American values by not assimilating to American values and taking financially from this country and eventually leading to where we are not financially capable of standing up as a country. All this is tied in and related. And here's my appeal, like to the people from all those countries that I just described. Your country in different ways, in one way or another, sucks for a reason. Okay? And every country sucks for certain reasons. But there's a reason why all of you from those countries want to come to this country. And there's a reason why none of us from this country want to immigrate to your country. Okay? So what that should mean for you is you should fix your country. Perhaps look at the founding of the United States. Perhaps look at some of the greatest waves of positivity and finances and growth of how the United States did it, and try to do that in your country. Try to pull that off in your country. Don't do socialism. Don't do communism. Don't do dictatorships. Don't do totalitarian rule, and see how that goes for you. To the military-aged males that want to flee your country and come here because you want to have sex with American women and stay here and get a job here and have just like this nice, easy life, maybe try to fix your own country. Maybe start a family there, and maybe by the time your grandkids are alive, your country will be livable. Okay? This isn't some sort of like, I'm an American and we're the best and all those types of things. But again, there is a reason you want to come here and we don't want to go there. We don't even want to visit there. How many of those countries that I listed would you not even want to go on vacation to, right? There's a reason for that. So if y'all focused on fixing it, it might actually work out. But if you keep just sending people to this country and, they're sending a little bit of money back home to you, that's not going to fix your country. It's not going to turn things around. So that's my encouragement. All right, next one here. Netflix doing everything in their power to force more LGBTQ plus content down our throats. So I've also included a link in the show notes to the Netflix website where you can view this whole report that I'm going to talk about. But there's a lot to glean from this report that Netflix released. It's their inclusion report. It's basically looking at 2023, 2024, and looking at the things that they did for LGBTQ plus inclusion. But I will give you the highlight here. In Netflix series from 2023 to 2024, roughly 43% of the leads and co-leads were LGBTQ. I mean, think about that. In Netflix series, from 2023 to 2024, almost half of the leads and co-leads were LGBTQ+. So almost half of the main characters were made to be lesbians, gay people, bisexuals, transgenders, queers, and whatever plus means identifying, right? So big takeaway here. And you don't think that this is going to or already has had an impact on you and your children? You don't think this is having any impact? Because if we go with the available data, it's nowhere near half of the population that is lesbian, gay, bi, trans, or queer. But if you watch Netflix, it just seems ubiquitous and normal. I mean, I go back to, how foolish I was when I was watching Modern Family, back, 12, 13 years ago when it got started or something like that, where there's a gay couple that had adopted a Asian baby, right? That's on the first episode of the show. And so it just normalized this gay couple and this family with this gay couple that, bought a kid and those types of things. But it just kind of put it in to where it's just putting it in as, yeah, this is just normal. That's why it's so nefarious that a lot of LGBTQ plus content is just jammed into Netflix shows. And so if you're a bad parent and you just don't want to deal with your kids, you set them down in front of the television and you hand them the little smart remote and they just start zip-zapping through Netflix. You have no idea what they're watching. Oh, but we have kid controls and there's a kid's profile. And they can't watch rated R movies or anything like that. I would almost rather them watch the beginning of Saving Private Ryan than to watch this show where they normalize a transgender kid, a gender-confused little kid, thus putting in their brains, oh, I wonder if I'm actually not a boy. I actually played with a Barbie once and threw a dress on because the person at the daycare wasn't paying attention. Oh, I wonder if I'm a girl. Where'd they get that idea? It was right there in the show. It wasn't inside of them, but Satan used it certainly to put that thought inside of the very impressionable head of a 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old, 6-year-old, 7-year-old, right? But Netflix is so awesome. You love it. Right? They had that Cuties movie where they basically were showing little girls dancing for the, masturbatory future aid material of gross men. And that was on that Netflix. It was on Netflix for years, right? That wasn't enough for you to get rid of your Netflix membership, right? You see these reports of all the LGBTQ content and blah, blah, blah and all that, but you just can't get rid of it because you like binge watching shows that are on Netflix, right? You can't wait for whatever, the Peaky Blinders movie or whatever the new movie is that's going to drop on the platform. And the only place you can get it without having to stream it illegally is through Netflix. And you're just paying them every month to change your mind about the things that God is trying to tell you are not right, that are immoral, that are wrong. And you're handing the remote to your kids, saying, have at it. Try not to come out weird. And then you're shocked when you're sitting there trying to talk to your kid who's buried in the smartphone that you gave them, right? You just write down there and all that. It's no big deal, right? You let them have a TikTok account. You let them play Roblox and Minecraft. You give all these pedophiles access to them in their DMs because you allow them to have social media because you don't want them to be the weird kid at school. And obviously you have to have Netflix because all the kids at school are talking about the new Netflix show that's talking about demons or this cartoon that's talking about how Lucifer was actually the good guy and actually he's misunderstood. And all this stuff is just right there on Netflix and they're watching it on their television in their bedroom, right? So they have full internet access. They got a smart TV in their bedroom. They're staying up late. They're watching God knows what because you don't care because you're in your room watching Netflix. You're not paying any attention. You're asleep at the wheel. And you're shocked when your kid starts having these really weird anti-God, immoral positions on certain issues. And you're like, but wait a minute, I send them to Christian school. Wait a minute, we go to church when it's not, travel baseball or lake season. Like, what happened to little Timmy? What happened to my sweet little daughter? You did, Dad. You did. You completely misjudged the impact of subtlety. Because again, if Satan were to use overt tactics all the time to overtly, attack you, it's way too aggressive. It's always sweet initially. Go back to the garden. Did God really say? Again, we don't go back to the garden and the serpent or the dragon. Didn't attack Eve, didn't try to kill her physically, just asked her some questions. It made her question the goodness of God and the pathway God put them on. Did God really say? And then you watch this Netflix show, you're a little kid, you're 6 years old and you're watching and it's like, hey, are you sure you're a boy? Are you sure you're a boy? Hey, little girl, are you sure you're only attracted to boys? Don't you think girls are pretty? Well, here's a couple of funny, cute girls on this show, and they're together in a relationship. Even though they don't know what that means or how that extrapolates out into morality writ large. But again, it's okay because you like Netflix and you want to watch some Netflix shows. So, I'll keep bringing these stories to you guys, but it's kind of one of those things. I'm going to give you the information, but are you going to take any action? That's where we're at now. So now we're going to go to a story out of my home state, Oklahoma. This is according to KOCO News 5 on November the 22nd. So before I actually read the article, we're going to play a game that we've played on the show before, but we always get new listeners, so we always have to keep, bringing this stuff back up. So the game is called Guess the Breed. So I'm going to read the headline, just the headline of the story, and you're going to guess the breed. Okay? Ready? So here's the headline. Oklahoma parents arrested after toddler mauled to death by family dog. So I'll go ahead and give you a second. If I had the Jeopardy music, I'd put it in there. Just go ahead and guess. Get your guess. Write it down if you need to. So if you guess pit bull, then congratulations. You have a fully functioning brain because, of course, this story is talking about a pit bull. To the story now. Actually, Landon, I want to do something right here. Let's go ahead and put up that picture. The picture is called Lachlan. So for those of you watching this on YouTube or Rumble, as I'm describing the story, we're going to leave that picture up. Okay? Here's the story. 2 parents in Oklahoma City have been arrested on second-degree murder complaints after a 2-year-old daughter, their 2-year-old daughter, Lachlan, was mauled to death by the family pit bull. Oklahoma City police were called to the home for a welfare check on Wednesday, where they found Lachlan's body covered in bite marks and other gruesome injuries. Officers reported that Lachlan had been locked in the room with the dog that killed her, and her door had a double-sided toddler lock, preventing her from escaping. Court documents reveal that Lachlan was attacked by the same dog earlier that month on November the 6th, and was taken to OU Children's Hospital with a partially severed ear requiring plastic surgery. Neither police nor animal welfare were informed of the incident, although the Department of Human Services was aware. Formal charges against the parents are still pending. We're leaving this picture up. But let's pause for a second, because I really want you to take a look at this little girl. Now, I want you to imagine the terror she felt being locked inside of a room with a dog that tried to kill her just weeks before. Imagine how she felt. Now imagine that dog, for no reason, grabbing that girl by the throat and tearing it out, or just hanging on until strangulation is complete. And now imagine how much blood would have came out of that little girl. But we're okay with this as a society. I feel like I'm screaming into the void. We're okay with this because pit bulls are cool looking dogs, right? We're okay with this as a society because pit bulls are just a misunderstood breed, right? We're okay with this because it's clearly always a problem with the owners, right? It's not the dog. Couldn't possibly be the dog. Now, I've elucidated in detail several times on this show that pit bulls are clearly not domesticated animals. They should be illegal to own. They are dangerous to the general public. And they almost always kill elderly people and little children, like Lachlan, right? And a lot of times it's the family pit bull. We got this pit bull because we've always had pit bulls, and pit bulls are great. And I've only ever had sweet pit bulls. And here we go. In a lot of these families, they've had the pit bull for 2 years, 5 years, 7 years. And one day it decides to just do what it was bred to do, which is to grab something and hold on to it until it dies. It's a big takeaway on this one. I am thrilled. I am thrilled that these 2 parents are likely going to be held accountable for the death of their daughter. And I think second-degree murder is the right charge. Okay? I think that pit bull owners should receive the punishment commensurate with the damage that the dog does to someone, as if they had done it themselves. So if your pit bull mauls your child to death, you should be punished as if you mauled that child to death. If your pit bull breaks out of its cage or out of the backyard and pulls an elderly man out of his wheelchair and kills him, which has happened, you should get the punishment as if you had ran down the street, found a man in his wheelchair, pulled him out of it, and beat him to death. You should absolutely do that. You should be responsible. Because so that'll be my trade for all you pit bull people that are going to be coming at me in the comments. Bring it on, people. Give me your stupid arguments that I've already dispensed with. But I'll give you that. We can still own pit bulls if y'all are okay with taking on that level of transparency in terms of what would happen. You have to take that on, the liability that would happen. You can own your murderous breed of dog because you think they're cool because their head's big and they're athletic and all those different things. But you have to sign on that you will take on the responsibility for everything that your dog does. Up to and including something that no one really talks about. People that own pit bulls, for whatever reason, think it's awesome to take their pit bulls to dog parks. But wouldn't you know it, their pit bulls will get in fights with other dogs and kill other dogs at dog parks. And a lot of times, there's nothing that can be done. But if Kyle Thompson, went to the Edmond Dog Park, and I went in there and I grabbed a wiener dog, and I picked it up, and I smashed it on the ground, and held it by its throat until it died, I would go to jail. Animal cruelty. But when your pit bull does it, it's like, dogs will be dogs. What am I supposed to do? So that is my olive branch that I will extend to pit bull owners, okay? If you're willing to take on the direct liability and to take on the full punishment as if you had done the crime, same as your pit bull, then maybe we can still own them. Or contrastingly, we can phase out the breed because it's too dangerous for public ownership. So what do you say? All right, next quick hitter here. Oprah announcing a stunning breakthrough in medical science. Stunning. So Oprah, a billionaire, has been on this media tour because for whatever reason, she decided to write a new book. I don't know why she would need to write a new book, but it's important to her. It's called Enough. Your Health, Your Weight, and What It's Like to Be Free, right? Great title. It'll sell a bunch of copies to a bunch of people that are low discernment. So she joined the other shrill harpies on the greatest repository of intellectualism known to humanity, The View, and she broke some news. And I mean, guys, this has to be one of the most incredible medical and scientific discoveries in the history of the planet. Watch.
All these years, I thought I was overeating. I was standing there with all the food noise, what I ate, what I should eat, how many calories was that, how long was it going to take. I thought that was because of me and my fault. Yeah. Now I understand that if you carry the obesity gene, if that is what you have, that is what makes you overeat. You don't overeat and become obese. Right. Obesity causes you to overeat. Right. Obesity causes you to have all of that food noise. And what the GLP-1s have done for me, and I know a number of other people, is to quiet that noise. Yeah.
There you go, guys. The obesity gene. The obesity gene, you guys. Breaking news, stop the presses. They have discovered the obesity gene. Oh, except what? Oh, that's all made up? It's not true? There's no such thing? It's a bit of a downer, right? So yeah, I know that this is going to sound kind of crazy for me to disagree with Dr. Oprah, but no, there's no such thing as an obesity gene. So this quote, you don't overeat and become obese, obesity causes you to overeat, is perhaps one of the single dumbest statements in the history of recorded media. I mean, that quote should be in the Smithsonian, right? It should go on tour at the Louvre. I mean, just absolutely and completely retarded. Makes no sense at all. It does not comport with the findings of a single study or a single reputable scientist. It's literally hogwash. And you know why people are obese? Like, we actually know the answer to this, and we don't need a huge, long study. It's because they eat too much and they move too little. That's literally the cause of obesity. But we have people like Oprah that want people to be able to cope with their obesity. And so, again, we don't want people to have personal agency and decision-making. And so we want to talk about obesity as if obesity attacked them genetically, right? Now, some people like yours truly, actually, have bad genetics, right? I don't have good genes in my family, good athletic, genes. So the consequences to, their healthy physiques or to their health or to their physiques, right, if you have bad genes, are more pronounced than they are for other folks with better genes, okay? So there can be people that can eat terribly and doesn't really show in their health and their body, and other people, if they eat terribly and don't move very much, it's very, very deleterious to them. But there is a truth that remains the same for all of us. If you burn more calories than you consume, or if you consume the same amount of calories that you burn, it is literally impossible for you to get fat. It's impossible. I mean, every single one of us participates in what's called energy expenditure, okay? So there's your basal metabolic rate, that's BMR. That's the calories that you burn just by staying alive. That's just your body doing its thing to keep you alive. And then there's the thermic effect of food. That's the calories that are burned, that are used in order to digest food, right? So that's just kind of a passive thing that your body does on your behalf. And then there's deliberate exercise. So that's exercise activity thermogenesis, right? Exercise activity thermogenesis. It's really funny that the acronym is EAT, but that's deliberate exercise. That's the things that you are actively doing at the gym, on the road, whatever. And then there's non-exercise activity thermogenesis, which is the movement that you just do during the day. Walking from here to there, fidgeting, your posture, having your posture up versus down. Every one of us participates in that. None of us get to opt out of that, right? And so if you eat like a healthy, responsible, disciplined adult and even get a moderate amount of consistent exercise, you won't be obese. It's literally impossible for you to be obese. So why would Oprah, one of the most respected and listened to voices on the planet Earth, be spouting this nonsense? Well, she actually answered it at the end of that little clip. She's hawking GLP-1s. Things like Ozempic and Wegovy, right? These supposed miracle drugs where you just inject them, or now you can even take one of them in a pill form, and boom, like magic, you get skinny. But as I've talked about, I linked on this show before, yes, people go from a larger size to a smaller size, but that's not without serious complications and issues. So one of the main issues is that, yes, your body is smaller and the number on the scale is lower, but you're not just losing fat. You're losing muscle. You're losing connective tissue. Which will cause you to have tremendous complications. But also, this is according to Everyday Health via MSN. I want to read from their article here. Although semaglutide, Ozempic, Wegovy, and other GLP-1 drugs have rapidly become infamous for a wide variety of common side effects, from diarrhea to Ozempic, face the most prominent warnings on their official U.S. Food and Drug Administration label alerts users to a small number of rare but more serious adverse events. These more severe complications include gallbladder disease, acute kidney injury, hypersensitivity and allergies, pancreatitis, pancreatic cancer, and thyroid cancer. So big takeaway on this one, don't take shortcuts. Because when it comes to your health and fitness, there is no such thing. Don't take the shortcut. So you ate your way and sat your way into your obesity. And you will eat your way and exercise your way out of it. Okay? I've heard people make arguments, even like Joe Rogan, like he's pro GLP-1s, like, oh man, you're so severely overweight and you just need this to kind of get you going. Well, his good buddy Jelly Roll, it was like 500 pounds or something like that. Well, the guy just took his diet seriously and started working out. And he's dropped like 200, 250 pounds. So at the same time, Joe Rogan's trying to celebrate his buddy, but then he's like, oh yeah, GLP-1s are no big deal. They are a big deal. They're causing tremendous issues within the body. There are lawsuits all over the place in the billions of dollars already, the fastest lawsuits in the history of any medical breakthrough or thing that was taken to market. And still people are lining up to take it because they're lazy and undisciplined. Because they want the easy button. They'll take the slight discomfort of the injection, right? Or the slight inconvenience of having to remember to take a pill if they can be smaller. So they want the benefits of being smaller, but they don't want to take on any of the complications, but that's not up to them. They want the benefits of being smaller, but they don't want to have to go through the hard part of being disciplined with their food and being disciplined with their energy expenditure via exercise. But there's only one way that is very, very good for you, and that's to take control of your eating and take control of your physical exertion and exercise. Don't take the shortcut, guys. All right, last quick hitter here. The latest worthless accolade LeBron James has given to himself, according to the New York Post on January the 13th. This is so stupid. LeBron James made it clear Monday he loves the new adornment that'll now be on his jersey for the rest of 2026. After the Lakers superstar debuted the patch that honors his 23 seasons in the league in a road game against the Kings, James said at his locker he was moved by the honor. Just super cool, he said. Super surreal. Super humbled. Blessed. I walked in here and seen it for the first time, and it was an emotional moment as well. The emblem features Cavaliers, Heat, and Lakers colors, as well as the words NBA Seasons with the number 23. It also has a silhouette of James throwing chalk in the air. So jersey patches, right? If it's not advertisers, jersey patches normally, how they work in sports, and this is kind of across the board, the patch just like commemorates something. Cause I remember what was it, like the NFL had their like 75th season or something like that. So they had the 75, right? So it's something that's important to the league overall, like its number of existence or something like that. You've seen patches like on Jackie Robinson Day in MLB, you'll have the 42 patch, and some entire teams wear 42 on their jersey. You've had different patches, like if someone passes away, right? If somebody that's important to an organization or an individual team passes away, they'll do a patch on the jersey. But now we have a jersey patch just for LeBron. No one else is wearing this patch. And it's celebrating the fact that he's played a bunch of seasons in the NBA, which I don't diminish as an accomplishment, right? To play any sport professionally at the age of, for 20 plus years is an accomplishment for sure. He became an NBA player as a teenager, was immediately one of the best players in the league, has had a tremendous career. He's on the Mount Rushmore of basketball, all the things. Okay. But right to my big takeaway here. The NBA and the new media are trying everything they can do to convince you that LeBron is better than Jordan, but it's just getting pathetic now, right? Because if you look at clips from this season that are all over the internet and everything, LeBron James is a joke right now. Like his coach is trying to get the play ran and all that, and LeBron's over like chatting it up with the other team or chatting it up with people in the stands. He hasn't played defense in years, but it's abysmal this year. He's not even pretending like he wants to play defense. There was a scout or an executive that said even on the Washington Wizards, which are the worst team in the league, as I assume, he would be like the third option on offense, right? So yes, he's playing for a long time, but he's not a championship caliber player playing on a championship caliber franchise at the moment, right? If somehow they were able to win a championship, the Los Angeles Lakers would be winning the championship because of Luka Doncic, right? That's essentially what would be happening. But this is just getting really pathetic because they've tried all the different angles. And so the LeBron James is better than Jordan people are now going to say, but he played so many more seasons than Michael Jordan. They're not going to talk about efficiencies. They're not going to talk about championships, certainly. They're not going to talk about greatness. They're not going to talk about how they changed the culture. It's going to be look at all the records he has, all the counting stats, and look how long he played. Yes, the counting stats are incredible, what he's been able to amass, and the fact that he's been able to keep his body at this level for this long, investing millions and millions and millions of dollars in his own recovery and probably some sort of anabolics. Yep, good for him. But this idea that playing for a long time makes you greater than Jordan is crazy. And the narcissism it takes to have your own individual patch that you put on your jersey to make you feel better. And the NBA's like 2 thumbs up. It's just kind of pathetic at this point. Well, guys, I know it was an epic episode, but we had to get into a lot of stuff today. So we're going to go ahead and leave it there. That'll do it for today, but we are going to do a quick resilience boost before we get you out of here. At Undaunted.Life, our mission is equipping men to push back darkness with content that forges spiritual, mental, and physical resilience. Don't forget, you can donate to Undaunted.Life, Undaunted.Life /donate. And if you need, or it's /donate //, you'll figure it out. Undaunted.Life /donate. And also, if you need a tax-deductible donation, there's a link to where you can donate to what Joby and I are doing with the Daily Blade. And then there's links to everything else that we talked about in the main topic and the quick hitters. Thank you for listening to this podcast. Wherever you're listening to this, please subscribe, rate, and leave us a positive 5-star review. If you want me to come speak live at your event or on your podcast, just shoot me an email to info@Undaunted.Life. That's info@Undaunted.Life. Follow us on Instagram and like us on Facebook, and check out our website for everything else, including how to donate to keep more content like this coming your way. Just go to www.Undaunted.Life. And as always, we want to thank the band Holy Name for allowing us to use their music for our content. The music on this podcast is their song Perpetua, which is off their self-titled debut album on Face Down Records. The links are in the description. I'm your host, Kyle Thompson. Remember, keep pushing back darkness, keep forging spiritual, mental, and physical resilience, keep seeking the Lion of Judah.